So there are some pastors getting up this morning and saying, you know, we have the best band in town, but there's one who can really say it. Wow. 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 It is amazing. And you know what else is amazing? Because this is the second time I've been in the service, is how those songs speak to me today in a very different context than they did, well, from the time in my life I can't remember. But isn't that amazing how it's still, I mean, for me, that's a song of God's blessing. And no matter how scarred my face is, no matter what, I'm going to have that blessing in a new moon. So I'm just, okay, I'll shut up now. All right, so do me a favor and say this after I say it. Hope does not disappoint. Hope does not disappoint. If you leave here today with something in your mind, I want it to be, let's say it together. Hope does not disappoint. Now, last week I suggested, and even got a little feedback from the telecast or whatever it is that we do, that perhaps I'm overstepping my bounds, so I thought I would do it again. And that is, I'm suggesting Paul talked about this thorn in his side. He had a thorn in his side. We never knew what it was. We never knew what the challenge was. And for me, I think it had to have been some kind of addiction. Because over and over again, he says, I wanted this to go away. It didn't go away. But God continues to work. He turned it over to God. He turned over his challenge to God, and God continued to work in his life. And so here, in his letter to the Romans, he writes this. He says, know that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Let's say this together. And hope does not disappoint us, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that has been given to us. Today, it's all about giving him hope. Thank you, Jim.
Well, it's funny. I still get a kick out of like Troy and Rhonda, who still call me, and Michael, who still call me Jimmy. And I haven't gone by Jimmy for almost, 17 years. And it's very rare that I'll hear that name and turn around to it because I just haven't for so long. And the reason that happened is because 17 years ago, this September 11th, I was asked to grow up. I was born with a birth defect called spina bifida, and I had the first of 55 surgeries when I was 9 days old. And as a result of those surgeries, over time, it was no question that I had chronic pain issues. I'd always had some sort of pain and some sort of thing to have to heal from. And I remember, the first time I took pain medication, I didn't like how I felt. I didn't like anything about how I felt. I just remember thinking, I don't ever want that again. And I was the guy in the band back in the day that was like abstinent, because I'd drink a little bit here and there, but I had a horrible experience with pot, made me crazy. I had, everybody else was doing acid and mushrooms and all that stuff, and they're like, Reiser, you don't need any more problems in your life. Don't do any drugs. And so I stayed away from them, all the while being married to this drug called Percocet. And I remember the day that it changed for me. It was one of those moments in my life where it was like, oh my gosh, I feel normal for the first time. And as a direct result of my birth defect and all of the things that came with it, I had to wear diapers till I was 6 years old. I had an ostomy. I didn't go to the bathroom like other people, so I got made fun of a lot, and it isolated me. And I always felt very alone and embarrassed. And over the course of time, that was just kind of my thing. And I figured, if I made you laugh, then you couldn't laugh at me. So I became a bit of a class clown and then picked up the guitar, and that was the thing that kept people away from me. And addiction and chronic pain and lots of different chronic illnesses are not illnesses necessarily about the drug or the pain itself. It's about the isolation that you go through thinking you're the only one. And that I spent a lifetime like that. I remember playing with Troy years and years ago at Farm Aid. And I think I piloted one of the airplanes to go to Farm Aid. I wasn't high then. Denzel was, I was not. No, interestingly enough, the FAA had such a knowledge of opioids that they wanted you to be opiate-free 3 days before you could fly an airplane. And of course, anybody who knows anything about opiate withdrawal, your third day in is your worst. That's the one where you got to hang onto the seat of your pants and hope nothing happens. And, but we flew there and I missed an entire career. I missed those moments being connected together with people who I am connected with today because of my disease. And so as a result of getting, I think that the ultimate thing for me was finishing up at Indiana University. Do we have IU fans here? Oh, excellent, wonderful. And do we have any Purdue fans? Oh. I'll speak slowly then. Just kidding. There goes Carolyn's admiration of me. I graduated top 10 out of 3,000 graduates with a Demerol habit and a needle in my arm. And I was justified by that. And I'll never forget, and this was where it just began, that little tiny bit of hope. When I got to the Cleveland Clinic, I met a fellow who said, maybe there's a way out for you. And I said, okay, I'm up for it. He says, I said, do you really think I've got a drug problem though, Doug? He goes, dude, you're a freaking pillhead, okay? I was taking 20, 30 Percocets a day, and that was just to get up in the morning. I wasn't getting high, and I hadn't for a long time. So I was really grateful for this young lady named Tina. She had a heroin addiction, and she said to me, wait a minute, you're in the pain program. I said, yes, I'm in the chronic pain program. I have legitimate pain. And she said, well, what about the way you used your drugs? I said, well, they were prescribed for me. She goes, well, tell me more about this Demerol that you had. I said, well, they prescribed Demerol. Yeah, I used a little bit too much, like a lot of bit too much. But I didn't want to tell her that. And she said, dude, you're more screwed up than I am. You are sick. You are a junkie. And I thought, now that I'm thinking about it, I used to wonder if this is what junkies felt like. And so she gave me that first gift of hope. And over the course of that time while I was in Cleveland in treatment, working with other people and learning a little bit about how my brain was working against me, and how I'll never forget sitting in Dr. Collins' office. And he looked at me and he said, so Jim, just because you had spina bifida, that entitled you to doing all these drugs? And I know what I wanted to say, but I didn't say it. I said, I guess not, Dr. Collins. And he said, no, it's time for you to grow up. He said, I'm not calling you Jimmy. You're called Jim from here on out. And I said, okay. And Jim was my father's name. Old Catholic, Irish, 6'2" Marine. And he didn't let me slip. He was the one person who didn't treat me like a baby. And I can understand why I got treated like one for a long time. But the old man was one of my first guides. And then other people came into my life. And instead of being in my way, they were in my life. And that was a whole different world. I remember the first time I came to Indiana after I got sober. And it'll be 17 years this September 11th if I play my cards right. So yeah. And it's funny, Carol, I thought about you. I came to this meeting. I went to a meeting, and a 12-step meeting, and I saw this girl afterward. And I was scared because I didn't care if anybody knew who I was. I was grateful to not be crazy. I just had an addiction, and that was wonderful. And so I connected with people. But I'll never forget going into that meeting. And this girl comes up to me afterwards, and she's just giving me these googly eyes. And I looked at her, and I said, man, I hope we didn't sleep together because I don't remember it. And, oh, shoot, this is church. I'm sorry. No, it wasn't you. But, no, she was a fan, and she knew my music, and it was a gratitude thing. And it was wonderful, and I've been connected with that whole family of friends ever since. And then lastly, this illness is not something that you go get treated and it's done. You wax and you wane. It's like any chronic illness. It's like life. I've had good times. I've had some bad times. A lot of people say, gosh, Jim, you're such an upbeat, positive guy. I said, have you met my wife? Because my wife has to sometimes hear the worst of it. And I feel badly for that sometimes, but she gets it. I remember early on when we first got married, I've only known her sober, and she said, well, I guess you're, never going to relapse. I said, oh no. There is no guarantee on that, because the further away I am from my last drug, the closer I am to my next. So I have to do things every single day to keep me connected, because my disease tells me I'm the only one, and it wants me to isolate. And that very same thing happened last week. We were on vacation. It's the first time we've been on vacation in a long time. And I was, unfortunately, when we were getting ready to leave, I was feeling kind of rough. By the time we got where we were there for a day and a half, and I was feeling so badly that we had to turn around and drive home. And I was hospitalized for several days with a pretty bad illness. And I remember being alone in the hospital room, and I was also in isolation, so I had to wear these NASA spacesuits to come into the hospital room to talk to me and give me my medications. I remember just being ticked off and mad, you know. I'm like, God, why is this happening? I mean, things are supposed to be kind of moving in the positive direction, and this is happening again. Is this my new normal? Is this what I'm going to have to deal with? And I just thought, you know what, stop for a second and remember what you did the first time around. You said a prayer. My first prayer was, God, if there is a God, save my soul if I have one. And I felt a little bit better. So I've had enough of a relationship with my God over the last 17 years that it allowed me to say another prayer and say, okay, God, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person in this hospital that's dealing with this. Let's get me through it. My poor wife had to listen to me complaining the whole time, how much I hated my body and how much I couldn't wait to get out of it. But then afterward, she knows, she gets it. And I'm glad I have that. I'm glad I have a place where I can put things that need to be so I can get past them. And this congregation and this today, playing with these guys, which is like, I've not played with a band in 12 years. And I've been up here listening, and I'm trying to concentrate on my words so I can remember them, because I'm enjoying this. And this is what got me through that hospitalization, a fellowship of other people, knowing that we were all going to be together today. And so I'm really glad that I'm here. And it's just wonderful for me to be able to deal with what I have to deal with, but remember the number one thing that keeps me down is keeping me isolated from others. And this is an opportunity for us to not isolate. So if you're feeling isolated or you're in that mode and you're feeling alone, just reach out and grab somebody, because people do like to help. And I've learned that over the years. It took me a long time to figure that out. So September 11th will be 17 years for me with no drugs, no alcohol, and no smokes. I quit everything on the same day, so everybody says, what's the worst kind of withdrawal? I said, whatever the hell you're coming off of. That's the worst withdrawal. But I've been a very grateful guy. And my first moment of gratitude, and then we're going to sing a song, my first moment of gratitude came while I was at the Cleveland Clinic. And because of what I have with spina bifida, my guts ain't quite right. And so when I was coming off of the opioids, withdrawal is really bad. Withdrawal is horrible. And you get diarrhea, you're nasty, you feel bad. Well, my bowels ain't right anyway, so I'll never forget, and I was crapping my pants during group, and it was like, this is crazy. Maybe this is God's way of telling me I don't need rehab, and I should just stay on drugs. Addict logic, and I realized, no, that's not the case. So I talked to the counselor, hoping he'd give me just a little bit of some sort of opiate or something, and he says, why don't you wear some Depends? And I said, I can't wear a diaper. That'll embarrass me. He said, okay, then just leave a trail of crap around everywhere you go. I don't care. Where's your compassion? So I discovered Depends that day, and it was kind of nice, because later on in group, when I had to go, I just kind of let it go, and it was warm, and my wife's giving me the TMI look. I can see it. I can hear it. I can feel it. But that was the first time I had gut-wrenching gratitude. The kind of gratitude that comes from getting the help that you need and not what you want. And that's what this message today to me is all about. Us taking care of each other whether we like it or not, so that we come out on the other side of whatever it is that's torturing us. So I am so excited to play with this band again, and I believe we have another song. Oh, we got a video first.